Hi guys, what's going on? I'm Wolf Warrior, and I thought I'd just bring to you today a quick deck profile for my Fiend / Summoner deck. Now I will say this deck isn't completely finished, but for what it is, I think it's a very good deck. And so let me show you what I've got so far. Now the first two cards that I play are two copies of Wall of Illusion. Now this card is a very good card if you like to play a very defensive style game. This is because of its effect. Its effect is that when it's attacked, the card that attacks it gets returned to the attacker's hand. So it's a very good card to play if your opponent plays a lot of Synchron monsters, because obviously they will be returned to the extra deck. The next two cards that I play are what I call filler cards. This is because they aren't necessarily needed, they're just there to fill in numbers. Those cards are Discblade Rider and Archfiend Interceptor. As I say, these two cards aren't necessarily needed, and so if you have got cards that you think could go in the place of these, please do let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. The next card that I play is a Stygian Street Patrol. I play Stygian mainly for its secondary effect, which is that you can banish it from your graveyard, and that allows you to special summon one Fiend type monster from your hand, which has 2000 or less attack. That's a very good effect, especially if you play monsters that can't be normal summoned, or that need to be special summoned. Or if you have a monster that needs to be tributed for, but that you haven't got a card to tribute with it. I now play a card called Snipe Hunter. Many of you may know what this card is, but for those of you who don't, it's a card that you can basically discard a card from your hand, select a card on the field, roll a dice. It has to be a 6-sided dice, as it always is. And then if it's a 2, 3, 4, or 5, that selected card will be destroyed. However, if it's a 1 or a 6, it will stay there and you will have just lost the card. So what I would say to do is to maybe discard a card like Stygian, where you can then banish it from your graveyard and summon another monster. The next card that I run is a copy of Doom Caliber Knight. Doom Caliber Knight, in my opinion, is a bit like an effect Veiler. That's because when it's on the field and your opponent activates a monster effect, you contribute this face-up card and negate the activation, and then of course if you do, you can destroy that target. However, this card can't be special summoned, as it says in here. If it would focus, it'd be good. I don't know whether it will or not, but it says that it cannot be special summoned. Oh, there you go. There you go. Oh yeah, so this card can't be special summoned, which is a bit disappointing, because it would be good to make it a sort of more usable effect, but I guess that they have to make it so that it isn't possible for you just to keep spamming that card. The next two cards that I play are Tin Goldfish and Summoner Monk. These two cards are kind of summoning cards. They both allow you to summon level 4 monsters. Tin Goldfish is a once per duel kind of thing, because he can only be normal summoned once, unless of course you add him back to your hand. His effect is that when he's normal summoned, you can special summon one level 4 monster from your hand. And Summoner Monk is that when he's normal or flip summoned, he gets changed to defense position, and then you can discard one spell card and special summon one level 4 monster from your deck. Now Summoner Monk's effect can only be activated once per turn, and Tin Goldfish can only be activated sort of once per duel, or more if you're able to add it back to your hand. The next couple of cards I play, well, few cards, there are 3 of them, are Crashbug X, Y, and Z. These 3 cards are very good because they allow you to quickly summon out each of them. For example, if you have Z, if you already have X on the field and you summon Z, you can then, sorry about the camera then, I accidentally knocked it. You can then special summon Y from your deck as long as X is on the field when you normal summon Z. That's a very useful effect to have, especially with a deck like this, which requires a lot of synchroing. Now the next card that I play is a Kuriboh Hedgehog. Many of you will know what Kuriboh Hedgehog is and what he does, so I'm not going to explain it. But I would say that in this deck you should run at least one, possibly two if possible. But that's just my opinion. The next card that I play is a Kuriboh. Now Kuriboh is I would say, a card that you definitely need in here. This is because with it you can basically stop your opponent from dealing you damage for one attack. Now it would be good if, like with Tin Goldfish and Doom Caliber Knight, that its effect could be activated more than once, but unfortunately you can't. I now play 2 copies of Kaya's the Shadow Monarch. I don't know whether I'm pronouncing that first bit right. If I'm not, please do let me know. But for now I'm just going to call it that. So Kaya's, I think you need to run at least 2. I did run 1 and it wasn't really working out, so I decided to run 2. And it has made my play much better than it was, which is very useful. I would say that with Kaya's, he is a very sort of powerful card. So yeah, if you can, run 2. If not, I would say you have to run at least 1, because this deck does heavily support him. The next 2 cards that I play are Infernity cards. They are Infernity Archer and Infernity Destroyer. Infernity Archer is that his effect is that you can attack your opponent directly, and Infernity Destroyer is that when he destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can inflict an additional 1,600 points of damage to your opponent. But obviously, being Infernity monsters, these 2 cards do have to, for their effects to activate, you do have to have no cards in your hand. I now play 5 different tuner monsters. Well, 6, but I only use 5 of them as tuners. The first one is Trap Eater. Trap Eater is a very useful card to have in this deck because a lot of them, like this card right here, are level 8. And so, being that it's predominantly level 4s in here, level 4s, all through here, they're all level 4, it just makes it very easy to quickly summon them. The only downside to Trap Eater is that he can only be special summoned by destroying one face-up trap card that your opponent controls. The next 2 cards that I play are 2 different Resonator cards. They are Flare Resonator and Dark Resonator. I don't generally use Dark Resonator's effect because normally I summon him and he's gone by the end of the turn, so I don't have any need to activate it. But Flare Resonator I use every time. Flare Resonator's effect is a Synchron monster that uses this card as a Synchron material. Gains 300 attack. Now it would be better if it was perhaps more, but like 500 or something, but I think for what it is, it's a very good and powerful card. The next card I play is a Junk Synchron. Now I think that any kind of summoning deck does need a Junk Synchron. Its effect is very useful, especially for things like Kuriboh Hedgehog being in your graveyard, allowing you to summon him back very easily, very quickly. I would say though that you don't necessarily need Junk Synchron here. He isn't a compulsory card, or it rather, sorry. But if you can, I would run at least 1, if possible 2. The next card that I play is a Dark Tinker. Dark Tinker is probably a very common card in most cases, but I like it quite a lot. Its effect is very useful in some situations, because it allows you to look at the top card of your deck, and if you want it, you can leave it on the top of your deck. If you would rather that you drew a different card next turn, you can put it on the bottom of your deck. And that's when it's sent to the graveyard by any means, so that's whether it's by spell, trap, by tuning, by just adding it normally, anything. Now the next card I play is Effect Veiler. Now I would say that you need to run at least 1 of this card in any deck. I would, well, not any deck as such, but I would say quite a lot of decks would work a lot better if they had something like an Effect Veiler or like a Doom Caliber Knight. Now on to the spells. The first spell that I play is a Swords of Revealing Light. Soul's Revealing Light is a very useful card in this deck because obviously being a summoning deck, it does require a lot of things to be summoned, and it does stop your opponent from being able to attack and destroy your monsters for 3 of their turns. The next card that I play is a Dark Hole. Dark Hole is a very useful card because it does clear the field very quickly, but in some cases I would hold off playing it, just because if you play it too soon it could get rid of your monsters that you need for later on. I also play a Mystical Space Typhoon, or MST as some people call it. It's a very useful card. I do need to run more than one, but for now I've only got to the one, which is a bit disappointing, but it is alright. And I've played 2 different cards which sort of revolve around summoning. They are Soul Exchange and Double Summon. Soul Exchange is a very useful card because it allows you to tribute one of your opponent's monsters when tribute summoning, which means that you can keep all of yours on the field. And Double Summon allows you to normal summon 1 additional time that turn. So for something like I play Utopia in this deck, or as some of you may know, number 39. So being able to have be able to get out some level 4s quite quickly is very useful. So I would say you need to definitely run these 2 cards without hesitation. The next card that I play is Nightmare's Steel Cage. Very useful card, a bit like Swords Revealing Light, although it does stop both of you from attacking, whereas Swords only stops your opponent. And this card's only on the field for 2 of your opponent's turns, so it's a bit less time, but it is still a very useful card nonetheless. And I'll play the card Monster Reincarnation. I didn't originally, which is why I say I now play. And it's a very useful card for things like Doom Caliber Knight or Kuriboh, where you can get the cards back very quickly, very easily to your hand. So I would say you need to run at least 1, possibly 2 if possible. But I only have 1 at the moment, but that's okay, because 1 does work fine. The next card that I play is an Axe of Despair. Axe of Despair is a card that I would say definitely needs to be played. I would say that you only need 1. I wouldn't say you need any more than 1, purely because I think 1 is plenty. And it's not a card that's used quite a lot in this deck. It's just 1 that is there to give you some extra boosts if need be. I now play Synchro Blast Wave and Extranet. Now these 2 cards revolve around the extra deck, which is why I'm showing you them together. Extranet is it's a field spell, as you can see there by the little star thing, but it isn't focusing, I'm sorry. Yeah, there you go. So by that, it's got a nice picture of a Goyo Guardian being caught in a net there. But it's when a Synchro or any kind of monster is summoned from the extra deck, the opponent of the person that summoned it gets to draw 1 card. So if your opponent summons a monster from the extra deck, you get to draw 1 card. Synchro Blast Wave is a very useful card because when your opponent has cards on the field, you can basically destroy 1 of them, but in order to do so you have to have a face-up Synchro monster on the field. Now we're on to trap cards here. The trap cards I play there are about the same number of trap cards as there are as spells. The first that I play are Torrential Tribute and Bottomless Trap Hole. Now these 2 are basically summon negations. Bottomless is the one I use more. I tend not to use Torrential Tribute, so I would say if you can, run 2 Bottomless, although I think at the moment it is banned. Not banned, limited, sorry, so if it does ever become semi-limited or unlimited, then I would run 2. But Bottomless is one that basically, when your opponent summons a monster with 1500 or more attack points, you can send it to the graveyard and then banish it at the same time. So it would be sent to the graveyard and then immediately banished. Whereas Torrential Tribute just destroys all monsters on the field when a monster is summoned. That's a bit like Dark Hole, so as I say with that, I would be very careful about how you play that card. The next couple of cards I play, well, there are 5 of them actually, 4 rather. They are all ones that basically negate or stop attacks. The first one is Negate Attack, then there's Draining Shield, Scrap Iron Scarecrow, and Mirror Force. Now, most of you will know what Mirror Force and Scrap Iron Scarecrow do, but for those of you who don't, Mirror Force is when your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can destroy all monsters that are in attack position on your opponent's side of the field. And Scrap Iron Scarecrow is that when your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can activate this card, and then that negates the attack. And then once the attack is over, you can set this card back to face down. Draining Shield is that when your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can negate the attack and gain life points equal to that monster. So if your opponent attacks you with something like a Blue Eyes White Dragon, you can play that and gain 3,000 life points, which can be very useful, especially if you're very low on life points. Negate Attack isn't a compulsory card in this, but I would say that it is a very useful card to have. Its effect is that when a monster declares an attack, one of your opponent's monsters, you can negate the attack and end the battle phase. That's a very useful card to have, especially if it's your opponent's first attack and they have a lot of monsters that have high attack out on their field. These next couple of cards are ones that I use to negate effects. The first one's Starlight Road, then there's Fiendish Chain, and Trap Tricks, Trap Hole Nightmare. Starlight Road, I would say, is a card that should be played. I don't think you should run, I don't think you need to, rather, run more than one. I think one is plenty. And its effect is that when a card or effect is activated that will destroy 2 or more cards you control, so it cannot be if you activate an effect, it has to be when a card or effect is activated that destroys 2 monsters that you control. You can negate the effect, destroy the card that has the effect, and then you can special summon from your extra deck 1 Stardust Dragon. That is a very useful card to have, because not only can you summon a Stardust Dragon, but you can also then go on to use Stardust Dragon's effect. Fiendish Chain, many of you will know what it does. It's that it can negate the effect of 1 effect monster, and it cannot attack either. And Trap Tricks Trap Hole Nightmare is when a monster is special summoned that turn, activate its effect on your opponent's side of the field. You can negate the effect and destroy that card. And that's a very useful card, especially if your opponent plays something like Light Swans, which has Judgment Dragon in it, which when it's summoned, people will quite often then play its effect, which destroys every card on the field except for that one. So I would say that's a very useful card to play with that, but I tend to go for Starlight Road if I can. The last 2 cards that I play are Call of the Haunted and Regiki Break. Regiki Break I play just because it's a very useful card for quickly getting rid of your opponent's field, because you can obviously discard a card, then target 1 card on the field and destroy it. And Call of the Haunted is you can special summon to your side of the field in attack position 1 monster in your graveyard. That's a very useful effect to have, I think, and I think that many people should play it. I think you don't really need to play more than 1, but I think that with what it is a very good card. Now, I'm going to go on to the extra deck now. The extra deck, I have quite a lot of Synchro monsters. I have, I think it's 12 Synchro monsters and 3 Xyz monsters, but I will show you what they are right now. So the first one I have is Beals of the Diabolic Dragons. Now, Beals of the Diabolic Dragons is a card that I've had for years, and I really like it. It's one of my favourite cards in my extra deck, alongside ones like Goyo Guardian and Stardust Dragon. I really like its effects. And I use it all the time, and it can really throw your opponent's game, because its effect is that this card cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects, and when you take damage from an attack involving this card or from the effect of a card, this card will gain attack points equal to that damage. Now, the other Synchro monsters that I play are Stardust Dragon and Red Dragon Archfiend. Now these cards are played quite a lot by most people, but I still really enjoy playing them. I especially like Stardust Dragon. I tend not to use Red Dragon Archfiend, because his effect does destroy cards that you control if they don't attack, and quite often if you can't attack you then lose cards that you were planning to use later. So I tend not to use him unless I have sort of got the chance to attack with every single card I have. And Stardust Dragon, I love his effect. I think that is a very useful effect and it's a very good effect. And obviously, as many of you know, it's that you can negate the effect of one card on the field that would destroy a card you control. Basically, you tribute this card, and then that negates the effect, destroys the card, and then you can re-summon it at the end of the turn. The next two cards I play are Black Rose Dragon and Ancient Fairy Dragon. I don't tend to use these two as much. I tend to go for something like Stardust Dragon or Beals of the Diabolic Dragon, or Goyo Guardian, purely because they are, in my opinion, much more powerful cards, and I tend not to use these two cards' effects as much. I'm not going to go into detail about these two cards because obviously they aren't necessary cards in this extra deck. I've put them in there because when I do use them, I do enjoy their effects, but I do tend to use other cards instead. The next two cards are 100 Eyes Dragon and Infernity Doom Dragon. Now these two cards were used by the same character in the 5Ds series. Whether you've seen that or not, I'm not sure, because I obviously haven't ever met any of you. But 100 Eyes Dragon, his effect is very useful because it allows you to replay an effect of a monster in your graveyard, which is a very useful card. If you have something like Snipe Hunter in your graveyard, you can replay his effect. And then Infernity Doom Dragon is that you can destroy one target, one monster, on your opponent's side of the field, and inflict damage to your opponent equal to half its attack. But the only problem with this card is that you have to have no cards in your hand, as it's an Infernity monster. But that's a good thing and a bad thing, but that's for you to decide. The next card that I play is a Dark Strike Fighter. Dark Strike Fighter is a card that I really like. He's got an effect kind of like Stygian Street Patrols, which, as I said before, I don't tend to use, but I do use Dark Strike Fighters a lot more, purely because it's much easier to use because he is much more able to destroy your opponent's cards. The only difference is that for this card you have to tribute a monster, and then your opponent will take 200 points of damage multiplied by the level of the destroyed monster. I also play a Goyo Guardian. Goyo Guardian is one of my favourite cards in this deck, and out of most of the cards. And that's because of its effect. I think it's a very overpowered card in some ways, but its effect is very useful because when it destroys a monster by battle, you can then re-summon it to your side of the field in defense position. Now, as I say, that is a very overpowered sort of effect, but I would say that you need to run at least one, possibly two, if you can, of this card. Now, I play 3 junk cards. They are Junk Warrior, Junk Archer, and Junk Destroyer. I tend to use Junk Archer the most, because of his effect, which is that you can banish one monster your opponent controls until the end phase where it gets resummoned. Junk Warrior, I don't tend to use. I just have him in there because I think any deck that runs Junk Synchron needs to have at least one Junk Warrior in there. And with Junk Destroyer, I tend to summon him just to get rid of my opponent's cards because of his effect, which is that you can destroy any number of cards up to the number of non-tuner monsters used to synchro summon this card. The next 3 cards I play are Xyz monsters. They are number 39 Utopia, number 21 Frozen Lady Justice, and number 6 Chronomaly Atlantis. Utopia, you will all know his effect, so I'm not going to read that out. Frozen Lady Justice's effect is that she gains 1,000 attack points for each Xyz material on this card. I don't know if you can see that. That is lovely artwork. But also you can detach one Xyz material from this card and destroy every single defensive position monster that your opponent controls. And number 6, Chronomaly Atlantis, his effect is very good in the way that when it's Xyz summoned, sorry, why did I say synchro? When it is Xyz summoned, you can add it. You can target one number monster in your graveyard. So, for example, Utopia, and equip that target to this card, and then this card will gain attack points. So that would gain it 2,500, and then you can detach one Xyz material from this card, send that to the graveyard, and halve your opponent's life points. Now that, in my opinion, is a very overpowered effect, which is why I guess you can only use it once, but I think that for what it is, it's a very useful card, and you should run at least one of him in your deck. I want to say thanks, guys, for watching, and as I would like to say now, this is my first video that I've ever made, so it was a bit iffy, but I mean, if you have any suggestions for what I could do in the future, or for any deck profiles or any kind of openings you want to see, do let me know, and I will try and do as many of the suggestions as I can, and I will read through your comments and things and see what you have to say. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you wish, and subscribe as well, that would be great. And as I say, leave comments as to what you think I could do better, what I could do in the future, because I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. But thanks.